Thank you, and welcome to Ask NeuroWork, the podcast where we answer your tough questions on neurodiversity in the workplace. I'm your host, Rachel Worsley, founder of Neurodiversity Media, and here with me I have Kate Hardiman, CEO of Unify 360, to answer today's tough question, which is how can AuDHD people, so people who are autistic and ADHD, manage workplace expectations around workload and outcomes while not eventually burning themselves out? So very topical question. This was submitted by one of our readers. And so to help us kick off answering this question, I go straight to Kate. Kate, how would you answer this particular question?
Hey, Rach, I'm really looking forward to hearing your insights on this one, given your amazing, valuable lived experience. We'd kick off with a little bit of I guess, a definition. AuDHD, it's a pretty recent and unofficial term, I guess, that describes a person who has both autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. So it's a bit of a mashup of those two terms. And what we know is that there's a significant overlap in the symptoms between the two, things like difficulty with attention, impulse control, and hyperactivity. And some research I looked at estimates that between 30 and 80% of people with ASD, or autism spectrum disorder, also have symptoms of ADHD. And on the flip side, up to 20 to 50% of people with ADHD might also have symptoms of ASD. In terms of work, AuDHDs can find that they have some challenges balancing their workloads and other expectations without sort of trying to put themselves into the risk of burnout, because those things might not always align with their unique needs and capabilities, which can then lead to stress and then burnout. And we do see that quite a lot. So it's worthwhile, I think, clarifying what we mean by AuDHD burnout. So it's a state of mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion that's caused by long-term unmanaged symptoms and stress. So people can feel things like an overwhelming fatigue, reduced productivity, and a sense of sometimes people talk about a sense of hopelessness or despair, and it's really awful. And it can take, some people I've discovered talking about 3 years to recover if they're really badly burnt out. So it's something that AuDHDers really want to watch out for. The good news is that with the right strategies and supports, AuDHDers can do well in their careers. So I went on a bit of a hunt for some tips for managing workplace expectations and preventing burnout. So AuDHDers should firstly really try and understand their limits and their triggers and their strengths. So recognize the tasks that you do that you might find challenging because of your ADHD or autism, things like things that might need your sustained attention or sensory processing. So be aware of triggers like routine changes or sensory overload, that sort of thing. AuDHDers really want to think about setting realistic, achievable goals. So start by breaking larger projects down, because large projects can be really overwhelming. Break those down into smaller tasks, or even set longer deadlines so that can match your working style. So goals should be, when we talk about SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, so that you've got a really clear roadmap for how you can achieve your goals. I find AuDHDers talk about, the ability and the benefit of breaking things down into bite-sized chunks. The third tip I have is around effective communication with managers and colleagues. So open communication with your employer and your teammates is really important, because if you're in a psychologically safe workplace, you should be able to discuss what you need confidently, and that can include having regular check-ins with your manager. Another tip is use tools and technologies to manage your workload and your productivity. So there are a lot of time management apps people are using that can help them track deadlines. things like noise cancelling headphones that are going to help you cut down your chances of sensory overload. So test out a few different tools to find out what works best for you. Not everything works for everybody, but I'd really encourage trialing a few different things and seeing what works well. Fifth is prioritizing self-care and stress management. It's so important, self-care, to avoid burnout. So things like taking regular breaks, try to maintain a healthy sleep schedule. Sleep is so important to everybody, but particularly for AuDHDers. Engage in some physical activity, go out for walks, do what you can, maybe go to the gym. It's all helpful, and just making sure you've got hobbies and other interests. A lot of AuDHDs have really good results with things like mindfulness and meditation and things like yoga as well. Look at getting some professional guidance. So whether that's therapist or a career coach or mentors, for example, who understand AuDHD challenges, because they can offer you some strategies that are going to help you manage workload effectively and stay well. And the last tip I had was just build a supportive professional and personal network. So look out for colleagues who are understanding. You know, that sometimes they stand out. ADHD or autism support groups are good places to look at connecting with, and also family and friends who are likely to be people who can offer you some emotional support. So I'd encourage AuDHDers to do as many of those things as they can to be able to more effectively juggle the demands of work and stay out ahead of that dreaded burnout.
Thanks, Kate. That was definitely really interesting and certainly resonated with my experience in terms of myself being autistic and ADHD. And, I was sort of taking notes throughout your discussion, actually, because I was like, oh, this is really one of the strategies I used to try and manage workplace expectations, outcomes, is to actually write them down. When someone talks about expectations and outcomes, this is what I expect. Write it down and make sure you kind of clarify with your manager about, is this what you want to achieve? And can we break it down into goals that we can easily sort of deal with and
Mm,
execute? Because that's key to, you know, if you try and if you sort of not have this discussion early on, you might kind of reach down halfway to a project where you realize actually maybe this isn't sustainable for me, but it might be too late to then pull out, or you pull out and you might cause a lot of grief, for people around you, because there's certain expectations were set up and it feels bad that you can't meet them because you didn't have that conversation, you weren't able to. So definitely I would recommend just writing down those expectations and outcomes that your manager may set out, and just clarifying with them, specific goals and deadlines that could be reached. And that way you don't run the risk of burnout trying to meet certain expectations and outcomes that you realize that were not clearly defined. And I guess that's also something, for me, clarity of outcomes is very important to me. Like, do I want a article to be written and published by 8 a.m. So speaking from a journalism perspective, because part of my background was in journalism. So do you want it published by 2 p.m.? Who are the people that I want to get this first draft, the article, to? When does it have to be sub-edited, or subbed as the term is usually called? What sort of quotes would I need to get from someone by a certain time? And how do I go about approaching them? So kind of making sure you break down the task into those specific goals and steps, and reaching out to your manager if you have any struggles is a really good way to just manage those outcomes and expectations without going into that burnout, I suppose. I will be repeating the question quite a few times throughout my answer, because I think it's really important to kind of, because for me, I think personally, effective communication with your managers, as you mentioned, Kate, is really critical to just ensuring that you're on the right track. And sort of the way to do it is to do one-on-one meetings. I guess I was lucky that, in a couple of previous jobs, I've had regular one-on-one meetings set up. In more recent times, I haven't actually had an official one-on-one set up. So instead, I will have to take the initiative to reach out and initiate those one-on-ones myself by saying, can I get 15 minutes of your time to work through this problem with me? Or can I get, half an hour to walk through this project? How does it work? And break it down, and sort of being able to take the initiative and providing a time limit around it kind of shows your managers and bosses that, you're trying to effectively manage those outcomes and expectations without burning yourself out, because you're very clear about how you're going to go about getting that task done. And that's really important from my experience, I found. And I suppose, tools and technologies you mentioned, Kate. I mean, currently I use a project management board called monday.com to manage my projects, and there's similar tools out there like Trello and all that. If you can have your own board that you organize your tasks effectively, that's a really good way. And if you especially get managers who back you to use that tool and regularly check in with you to help you maximize that tool, that's even better as well. So definitely, as you can see, the theme for my answer is, reach out for help when you need it. And I suppose, yeah, when it comes down to managing those expectations and outcomes, I think self-care, I agree, is important. Make sure you put yourself first and take care of yourself, and try not to burn out by, agreeing to every single task that comes into your in tray. Sort of really scrutinize the priorities and importance of it, checking with your manager, making sure you can prioritize what's important and get that done first. And if it's too much, get some help with delegating some of those tasks. There's definitely, we all have a finite amount of time, so there's only so much we can do. So I guess hopefully from sharing my experience just then, hopefully that gives you an idea as how, as an autistic and ADHD, I manage those expectations, outcomes. And really the biggest theme is, I think, clear communication with your managers. If you've got that really good working relationship, I suppose. Kate, do you have anything to add to what I've just said?
Just in absolute support of that. So I think it's really about what are your unique needs? Have you identified what they are? Can you communicate them effectively, like you were just talking about, using the right tools and prioritizing self-cares? And I think that really helps AuDHDers manage expectations in their job without compromising their well-being. So finding that voice and that assertiveness to be able to have those kinds of conversations. And employers have a big role to play here too, because they're the ones that need to cultivate an inclusive and supportive work environment overall that really shows that they're recognising the different needs and the contributions, not just of AuDHDers or neurodivergent people, but all employees. So I think that's really the key.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kate, for sharing your thoughts on this question. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Rach.